for tuning in to our 4th Installations Roundtable. We're super excited to have Lina Dib and Marsha Dorsey-Outlaw joining us. We are going to have a great discussion today. Quickly, before we start, Art League is in the midst of the Mardi, so if you want to support Art League, there's some great content online. Check out the silent auction, and there's also documentation of the kickoff that happened very recently. The live auction will be live until the 25th. Is that correct, Erin?
Yep, that is correct.
Excellent. And Lina's work is in the silent auction, so.
Yeah, version of this.
Yeah, right. It's right behind you. Awesome.
Not on purpose. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get started with my presentation. I'll go through it pretty quickly so we have time for our discussion, but all of this information is available through Art League's website and Facebook, and there's also an installations website, which, Erin, can you put the link to that in the Facebook Live, please? Thank you. Okay. Sorry. I'm ahead of myself. Okay, Installations, we're here. Installations is a series of 11 site-specific public art projects that us at Art League Houston are organizing in partnership with the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. There is one site, one project per each of Houston's 11 city council districts. Each project will be temporary, unveiled from around springtime until about fall of 2020. Of course, things are different because of COVID, but each project will be on view for approximately 8 months. So the artists and projects were selected by an advisory committee made up of artists, curators, and art world professionals who are experts in the field. So we're really thankful to them for all of the hard work they put into helping us select the artists and then the projects. Quickly, our project team. I'm the project manager, Sophie Asakura. Our fabrication managers are Kelly O'Brien and Patrick Renner with Flying Carpet Creative. Big thank you to them. Our marketing managers, Chris Valdez at Laredo Street Projects. And then our lovely Art League staff, Sarah Beth Wilson, the Director of Curatorial Projects and Exhibitions, the Executive Director, Jenny Ash, and then Erin Cardy, who is a sort of ghost on today's Zoom call, helping us out with communications stuff. Teresa Escobedo, Debbie McNulty, and Monique Magoka, big thank you to them, the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. So Art League took on this project because this project embraces the core values of Art League, supports local artists and projects who are culturally diverse and reflective of Houston, platforms projects that challenge traditional notions of public art, and it provides support and learning to artists from the beginning up until fabrication, completion, deinstallation. So we acknowledge that art is a tool for expediting gentrification and displacement, and so we want to highlight and support projects that create a meaningful, equitable connection with the immediate community, which we think these projects have done. So the project goals are to support local artists, challenge traditional notions of public art, like I said, reimagine public spaces, respond to specific needs of communities in Houston, spread public art throughout Houston, engage and empower community members, and unearth, reinterpret, and/or platform local histories. So here is our list of the artists per district. This is also found online. Today we will be talking about District E with Lina Dib and District K with Marsha Dorsey-Outlaw. The opening dates on this are outdated. So I'll start with District E. Thank you, Lina, for joining us.
Thank you.
Your project is Oracle Tree, and the location is Exploration Green Phase 1, which is where the red star is. The council member is Dave Martin. Quickly about District E, so it contains some of our most important waterways. It skirts the entire east side of Houston in kind of two distinct nodes, I guess. Lake Houston in the north with the Kingwood area, and then it is connected via a small waterway to the Ship Channel and the kind of edges, the industrial edges of the ship channel, and then down basically until Clear Lake in the south. So it's home to Kingwood, Clear Lake, Edgebrook, Meadowbrook, Allendale, South Belt, Ellington, and North Shore. It's also home to some important Houston landmarks, like Space Center Houston, Ellington Field, and the Port of Houston. So then I'll do a quick intro of District K, and then I'll go back to Lina. Okay, so District K, artist, like I said, is Marsha Dorsey-Outlaw. The title of her project is Geode, and it's located at the Townwood Community Center. And the council member for District K is Martha Castix Tatum. So the red star, as you can see, is just north of Sims Bayou, right off of the Bayou Greenway. Beautiful spot. District K is home to the Astrodome area, Braeswood, Braes Oaks, Central Southwest, Fondren Gardens, Fort Bend, Houston, South Main, Westbury, Willow Meadows, Willow Bend area neighborhoods. It also contains the Fort Bend, Houston complete community. Fort Bend, Houston is a collection of middle-class subdivisions developed in the 1960s and 70s in northeastern Fort Bend County. So Fort Bend is unique in that most of the city of Houston is in Harris County. This part is in Fort Bend. Beginning in the 1970s, the area has attracted middle-class African-American families. Most of the housing in the area is single family, and some new construction has begun in Fort Bend ISD community. So I mentioned that because the Complete Community is a mayoral initiative focusing on some historic and under-resourced communities in Houston and in pretty close proximity to Marsha's project. So Lina, I think we'll turn it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your practice and then how that has informed your site selection and then the project that you chose to do? And sure. I can flip your images.
Yes, well, to talk more generally about my practice, I think I kind of situate myself at the intersections of a lot of things that we like to imagine as very distinct, and particularly nature and culture, nature and technology. And so I've also been interested in, and we spoke about this earlier, but about memory and the ways that we kind of hang on to the past and also use that to imagine speculative futures. And so a lot of my work has been a way of just tuning into now, maybe letting go of a bit of those tethers from the past and the future, but as a way to also reconsider those kinds of temporalities and also our relationship to nature, to the world around us. And by nature, I also mean to include humans. So a lot of my work is about connection, and not just connection to the cicadas that we're hearing, although that is a really wonderful way to kind of bring us into the present, but by tuning in general, I think we can become sort of more active listeners, more aware, and just more ready to establish meaningful connections. And there's that, and then there's the role of technology. People always think of me as sort of very techie, and it's funny because I joke and I'm like, oh no, I'm a recluse that would just run off to the woods in a second. But dealing with that has been really interesting, and thinking that sort of the solution in the future isn't to idealize some sort of untouched nature where we're going to run off into this American pastoral ideal, but instead we should complicate that and embrace the fact that we are a part of nature, or that the future with nature might also include new technologies, new ways of thinking about our relationship to water, especially with District E. But yeah, so I think those are themes that have sort of permeated my work, both visual work and sound work. And they're immersive. Usually a lot of my pieces, there's some 2D pieces, which are also sound-based. So like this piece behind me is our dogs barking, but they're sonograms. So I like seeing and playing with sound and how it almost creates a landscape as well. So again, this relationship to place, but different senses. And then this particular piece for Exploration Green is a sound-based piece for the most part. There's a bench that I'm also building to create a certain place for I like to say it's a place for intimacy in a time of social distancing, again, which might seem a bit paradoxical, but where we can pay attention to nature, and also maybe spend time with, close ones doing that. Very briefly, the piece is going to be a couple speakers in a tree. And this tree we call the oracle tree. We've always had a fascination with forecasting, I think even more so now. And I think Houston in particular has a really amazing relationship to weather, good and bad, right? Traumatizing and awe-inspiring in a lot of ways. And so this tree, we can go there and listen to sounds of tomorrow's weather. So I've collected sounds from the park, some recordings that people have made as well of nature sounds, but also lawnmower sounds and other, bicycle bells and things like that. I've gotten a lot of great suggestions from people who frequent the park. And then I also turn some of those sounds into musical notes as well. So I'll mine the actual recordings and create compositions, and the compositions will change or vary according to tomorrow's forecast. So you can go there and listen to the future. So yeah, it's a weird mix again of temporality. Sounds reported in the past that tell us about tomorrow, but really also help us be in the now. Usually when we walk away from these intense listening moments, we start to notice things we didn't notice before. So that's the sort of quick version of what this piece is. It's not up yet. There have been some sort of, meeting delays and things because of COVID, but I'm really excited to get it up there. Everyone's looking forward to it, and everyone on the Conservancy board's been really excited. So, awesome. Yeah. I'm also happy to talk more about this particular place. It's a really interesting.
I would love to hear how, so for those listening, the way that we sort of structured this project, we had some kind of pre-selected sites in each district, and then we approached these artists and asked them to select a site or a district that they wanted to work in. So out of all of the city, I think, Lina, your first choice was E, and then you picked Exploration of Green. So can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to this site?
Yeah, it's a really cool site. It's it's a little far. It's in Clear Lake, and I currently live in Houston, closer to town. But I also love a reason to go out and kind of explore those other parts of Houston. District E is strange. I've loved learning about the way the different districts are spread out, and this project definitely helped me learn a lot more about that. This particular site used to be a golf course, and now it's a nature conservancy. And there's 4 phases to the project. They've constructed, the piece will be in part of phase 1, which is already complete, and you can kind of see the pathway around this different waterway. There's an island in the middle that is home to tons of species already. So you can sit at the bench and have this view of the island. I think you have an image of that island, maybe, I'm not sure.
So you can see phase 2 up in the top left corner of that.
Yes, exactly. And there are 4 phases total. And I think that this, especially with our relationship to weather, this park or conservancy is really amazing because it serves to mitigate flooding. It's already saved homes in that area because it's a water retention basin, basically, or area. I mean, it's not really like an official water basin, but that's what it does. It soaks up all the water, all these grasses, etc. And I think it's really forward thinking. Houston needs to embrace the fact that we live on a swamp with concrete on top, that we live with water. And so rather than fighting it or trying to pretend it's not there, what are ways that we can really design with, alongside embracing water? And then it also brings in all these other species. So people get to go and learn more about the other living creatures that we share this planet with. And so I really like the space for what it, I think, shows the rest of Houston in terms of, what we can do, what's possible, and how to mitigate some of these really important issues that we're having with respect to flooding, and again, how to live with water, how to also create, different filtration systems, et cetera. So it's been a really interesting spot too, because I think because of COVID, a lot of people are kind of tapping into their relationship to nature a little bit more. And that's just something great about all these projects, is that they're outside. People can go and actually enjoy them. So, but yeah, I think those are the things that most drew me to this particular space. It's been really great to spend some time there.
Yeah, super, super interesting initiative in terms of park space, turning a golf course into essentially a wetland. So unique for Houston, I guess. I haven't heard of other projects quite like it. So thank you for discussing that. Did you want to talk about any of these other images that I have?
I mean, there's so many species. I mentioned a few, different frogs, and then again, some human-made sounds. And so I've just been having fun speaking to different park goers, and there are also different websites online that I've discovered where there's a lot of citizen science happening, and more so. So the Houston Audubon has been great resource as well, and people just post sightings of different things, and that points me into different directions. And yeah, I just show up and people look at me and wonder what I'm doing there with my mic and headphones. But it's also really meditative. So working on this is also really good for me in a way. So yeah, both meeting new people in the community and then also just stopping for a while and just listening.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you. That's a great spot to transition to talking to you, Marsha, because you also have been meeting with the community and listening. So I will switch to your images. Would you like to share with us a bit about your project, your practice, and why you picked the site you picked?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I actually picked District K because I live here, and but I grew up in Third Ward. I was raised there. I know all of its intimate corners and shortcuts and stories that are only known by a certain few. A lot of those anecdotal, magical experiences in Third Ward, but I moved to this area just south of the Willow Bend area. Most people know it as Hiram Clark because of its proximity to my son's school. So I needed this area very badly. I needed Meyerland more, but I couldn't afford Meyerland. And then found this hidden place, this neighborhood is Cambridge Village. And I found out later from a neighbor that it was a very deliberate community. In fact, there were a handful of professionals in the mid-60s, I believe, that were brought here in a van by Mickey Leland.
Wow.
And asked them, to leave the north side and to leave their roots of Third Ward and to come and start this new community. So it has an incredible history that I wasn't aware of. But again, I needed it because of the arteries that took me to the places that I needed, Most people who know me remember my saying that if it's outside of the loop, I don't need it. But this area is just outside the loop, and it's close to the Beltway. It's right off of 90, Post Oak, all these other places. So I have all of these straight lines to every place I need to go. So it is an ideal location. And since I've been here, I've seen it go through a remarkable change. And not only the complexion, so to speak, of its culture, and not a dilution in any way. It's an evolution, and it's a beautiful one. It's interesting. But I've also seen a change in its textures visually and tactile. And that's sort of how I explore my work too, using ceramics to be able to think about our intimate relationship with objects. I had recently come off of doing for the Heights Obstacle art exhibition, which if anybody hasn't seen that, it's one of those events that you look forward to each year because there's a new group. That's why I'm so excited about working with installations here, and I hope it continues, you know, to know that it's temporary, that it's a dialogue or a statement that all of these artists can bring to the table and invite the community to talk with us, you know. So the piece that I came off of in the Heights was an interesting challenge for me, and they usually invite sculptors, and I don't consider myself a sculptor in any way. But it was an opportunity for me to do a mosaic that had a lot of bas relief, you know, that you could feel it, that it moved in many ways, and that people weren't afraid of it, you know, that it would break or that it would cut or any of those things. So it was a lot of fun. So I wanted to make sure that I explored textures in this piece as well, you know, something that would move and dance,
Yeah.
and talk to people.
So my organization on this is a little weird. Marsha, were there any of these project images that you wanted to talk about before?
Yeah, sure. The piece that you're showing now is called Raiment. It's in the Park in 3rd Ward on the west side. And it faces, each side faces either east or west. And I love the way the light in certain times of the day, it's many different things. I had hoped that it would become more like a sunrise or sunset, and that it's not a thing, but it's an event, you know, or many, many events. And so that it would be different every time you visit. And a lot of the details that you see here, like the scrolling was actually taken from architectural elements off the front porch. Many of those things that are disappearing right now with the evolution of neighborhoods and what's considered beautiful and not. This actual piece right here is from a rental property that my grandmother created and built from 1922. And so I have memories of that, it being my job to sweep the porch, the stoop, and the stairs, and watching one of the tenants' girlfriends plait his hair, you know, and see what a beautiful, intimate relationship that was. So there are lots of, as Lina was talking about, keys and sounds that those elements made, you know, the closing of a gate and how that's almost like wind chimes, you know, that you know someone's approaching. So those little things that as people move, either by choice or by necessity, are still embedded in their memory, you know. And so, yeah, that piece contains a lot of things that we touch, you know, the church fan, the keys, and I even found in my aunt's drawer a token from the Houston Electric Company that ran the streetcar. And those were stories that I always used to hear too, about going to visit their grandma or my great-great-grandmother on Pierce. And we all know what Pierce looks like now. And so it's those little things that evoke and ignite our memory and give us hope, you know.
Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to talk about any of these projects? I think the next couple images are of the footprints.
Yeah, this piece is actually at the Judson Robinson Senior Community Center. I think that was from 2017. And I think I may have mentioned that I'm very interested in those places where we gather, either on purpose, you know, just by accident. And the chain link fence is certainly one of those things. You know, they usually meet us right about here, and it's generally where a neighbor might meet another neighbor to exchange the latest gossip or news or whatever, just like, you know,
Yeah.
Someone died, is there anything I can do? Was it a boy or a girl? Those sorts of things, you know. Oh, I see the storm, you know, blew down your, some branches of your pecan tree. Can I come over there and get it so I can have some good barbecue wood? You know, those are where those conversations happen. And I wanted to have something that was something familiar to the people out there, so that it would be a nice centerpiece for engagement and conversation. And it was it's an incredible icebreaker, and they were really giving, participated quite a lot. Prints, I hate to say that there are probably about at least maybe a dozen people who are no longer with us, and it was a sort of a tribute to those people who founded that community and how they walk the walk rather than talking the talk, which is a lot of conversation that we have on the table right now. So that meant a lot to me.
Thank you. I think the next ones are some detail shots. This is again what you were talking about with some
Yeah, just more examples of how I wanted to embrace the familiar. You know, a lot of these things are disappearing, and I wanted to elevate them. One thing I noticed in my conversation with the director at Judson Robinson at the time, there might have been a couple of days where for some reason they were either open late or not open that day. And through my conversations with him early in the day while the kids were still at school, it was just me and the staff, you know, realizing how when so many people come by that center and the door is not open, all sorts of havoc ensues. You know, there's certain things that we depend on, just like the sunrise or the sunset, you know, oh no, where's Mr. Davis, you know? And so I wanted to celebrate the fact that that relationship is simple as his key. And that when we think about it, we probably touch our car key or our house keys more often in a week's period than we've touched another human being. And it's neither bad nor good, but it in itself is important and represents a lot to many people. So I wanted to honor those keys that would be retired, because once the new building was built, the entire landscape of, you know, where he had worked for quite a few years was actually gone, except for the memories, you know.
I'm gonna switch to your project images real quick, Marsha. Can you tell us a little bit about why it is that you chose Townwood, and what attracted you to that particular location, I guess?
Well, as I mentioned, I've lived here for quite some time, and I had no idea where it was. My sister, when she tells me about certain things in this area, which of course District K is very large, but even between her house and mine, you know, she uses street signs, right? She says, oh, just make a right at the donut shop. And I was like, we have a donut shop here? It's like, what are you looking at when you drive? Of course there's a donut shop right on the corner of this street and that street. I didn't know it. And I realized that choosing this area because of its proximity is not as easy as one would think, because I'm realizing that I don't know it as well as, you know, I knew Third Ward, which is a 20-minute drive away. And so I thought it was an interesting challenge for me not to make commentary on others who needed to move, and not realize that there are so many different exercises I could do to deepen my empathy for others, and that maybe it had not been there, that it was only superficial, and that what I've experienced, other people have as well. And so I needed to explore mine and share it honestly, you know? So I chose this area. I don't necessarily recall a concentration of public art other than the boxes, which are very cool, you know? There's quite a few of them, so I'm starting to learn to say, oh, by the Obama box or by Shelby's box, you know, rather than street signs or the donut shop. And so I think that when I use employ objects in the work to tell a narrative, I tend to concentrate on ubiquity versus obsolescence, you know, and how we evolve. And this time, rather than talking about things that may be disappearing or things that are elusive, I wanted to talk about something that was living and breathing, and that no matter where you are, you take your agency, your capacity, and your imagination with you. So I wanted something that radiated outward. And so I thought about something that might evoke like the rings of a tree or the beautiful bands in an agate. But technically I wanted to challenge myself, which is what you guys invited us to do.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something a little more challenging. And rather than have a surface with bas relief, I wanted to have cleavages and that sense of danger and being on a precipice of some sort. So I thought something with a cavity would be interesting. So that's how this piece evolved. And I think when we first met, and I met with Kelly and Patrick, I wanted this piece to dance a bit, you know, to kind of say, hey, I'm here and I'm alive, you know. But it presented some technical challenges, and I think it worked out better for what I wanted to say or ask, that it was more a sense of stoicism and resolve, you know. So it was almost like a deconstructed human figure in contrapposto, you know.
Yeah.
Sort of like my grandmother was, you know, when she would survey at the end of the day, or she had a particular challenge, with her hand on her hip and take a very cleansing breath, sort of like that, you know. And so I was able to achieve that.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Marsha.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, quickly, we had discussion topics that we've talked about prior to this, which I'm definitely going to get to, but a thought that occurred to me that both of you sort of mentioned is what is possible at a point of contact or at a point of overlap, right? So the ecology of exploration green is sort of like the point of contact between water and land, and like all of the amazing biodiversity that opens the door for, right? That those wetland environments are some of the most productive on Earth, is an incredible thing. And Marsha, your point about the chain link fence, right? What new things happen at a boundary, and how can we kind of recontextualize those, what we could consider them borders, in a way that is an obstacle. And we could also kind of try to recontextualize these things as places of meeting and sharing and contact. So I love that both of you are sort of talking about those things. And Marsha, your point about a fence, there's lots of people that would think of a fence as a point where there is a lack of contact, but in fact, there are two things touching at that point in time, right? And what can cross over that. So that's just something that I'm thinking about. But we had mentioned talking about joy and play as an investment in the surrounding community, or using this type of landmark creation as a way to build community investment in a particular location. So I wonder if either of you have any immediate thoughts about that. And then I think I would like to talk a little bit about temporality, because both of you have brought that up in some way as well. So if you want to weave that in, or if you think that is relevant to the sort of investment in placemaking. Love to hear your thoughts.
Those are great connections. And I really love the way you sort of brought that together, the different things that we're talking about, and especially the point of contact. So again, rather than seeing things as completely disparate, or, you know, nature belongs over here, the city belongs over here, or here's my space for play, here's my space for work, or a lot of those things seem to be shifting right now. And I mean, both good and bad. I think we have to adapt to some of those changes fairly quickly. But yeah, I think with respect to exploration green, it has become also what you were bringing up, almost like a destination place. So a lot of these artworks, I love this idea of saying, well, I'm going to go on a field trip. I'm not going out as much as I used to, obviously. And so to be able to have somewhere to go and an excuse to have the sun hit my face and go wander around outside. And I love how Marsha's piece is so tactile as well. I feel like it's almost forbidden now. And I was like, I'm going to go and touch it and then I'll wash my hands or something. But there's something very luring about it that I feel is also grounding. So yeah, I really just love those comments that you made about the work.
Oh, thank you. And I think when we think about play, we've all had to evolve. I mean, who would have thought we would be doing what we're doing now? And I'm learning when we talk about the preservation of culture, and I've learned so much about myself, and not to say that I might be honoring those who came before me and what they thought of community and how that should be. I realize now, then looking at documents and things that my family has saved, that they were really innovative and that they were looking for ways of breaking these boundaries and simply being themselves, you know. I see that a lot with people now having to go outside, you know. I don't know why that's such an odd thing now, that people are actually playing in the dirt and pulling up worms and things like that. I talk a lot with my brothers. I'm the youngest in my family, so they have stories about pulling off honeysuckle off Miss Wilson's fence or something and drinking the sap from it, you know. And I'm seeing a lot of kids now in the neighborhood, like when the internet goes out, they're actually going outside and exploring, you know. I think that whole human imagination and our desire to connect with nature, all we need is an interruption.
Yeah.
You know, and it seems so natural, you know. I went out to walk the dog at the park, which I should do more often. And, you know, I spoke to someone about 20 feet away and I said, yeah, I got to confess, the internet went out. And they were like, yeah, but that's why we're out here too. So sometimes we need that little push. I think it would be awesome to have that sort of playful placemaking. And I think a lot of some of the work that's out there now, I think our organizations are very thoughtful about not making it so rigid as far as, you know, artistic expression. I think one thing that I would like to see is that maybe some of the art that's presented, I believe as artists, we have a responsibility to say, ask pertinent questions or to be able to what's going on around us, even though, you know, they are heavy, you know, ideas. But sometimes it's nice to just have something to bring about delight, you know. I think I saw some of the interview before with Rebea and with Violette. I think everybody is sort of doing that. You know, we might be addressing very heavy subjects, but understanding that in the end, it's those adjectives that we're learning to describe about ourselves, you know.
Yeah.
And to be able to go with it, accept it, and, you know, fly with it. I don't know if that addresses the question, but to find those adjectives, to be able to describe, you know, in spite of everything, you know, I am still rested. In spite of everything, I'm still interested. I am exhilarated. And what does that mean? You know, it's sort of like when you mentioned joy, you know, there's so much going on. I can't pay my bills. I can't go to work. The kids are driving me crazy. But boy, I feel pretty good, you know? So to be able to accept those things and not feel the guilt of it, you know? I think a lot of times we find when we have fun and watch others freak out about it, you know, I wish I could do that. Like, try it.
I love that you brought up movement as well. So just moving out of our houses, yes, to these destinations, but also just moving around, because that's something I think at the beginning of this sort of COVID crisis, I got sort of tethered to my laptop and computer for teaching and all those things, and really felt the difference in my body. And I was like, I need to remember that I even used to moving a lot and somehow do that. But also how movement brings connection, I think, is really a wonderful thing that you brought up. And both with respect to each other and ourselves. So there are like bicycle shops are running out of bicycles. So you mentioned like people are actually out more, which is great. Yeah. And then also migration has happened with, and you were like, we need to fly with it. And I was like, yeah. And so I love learning about migratory species as well. And they're really stopping in at Exploration Green on their way north. And that also reminds us that we really share a space. And so while Exploration Green might be this nature conservancy that helps us think of the environment in particular ways, you mentioned other people's work. Rebea's work makes us think about how shared environments might be really different in other parts of Houston, right. But that we're also connected. And so what's happening even in Argentina is going to affect bird species landing here, and that's going to, and then the pollution happening somewhere else is also going to affect those things. So there's this notion, I think, of movement that's also really important in a lot of our work, and kind of drawing threads through the different pieces is as much a part of the pieces as are the individual works in each district.
Yeah. Right on.
Love that. When you were talking about, Marsha, thinking of the, in spite of everything, I'm still feeling exhilarated, feeling happy, whatever. I read a really great Zadie Smith quote the other day, where she's talking about joy as opposed to pleasure, and that joy is feeling that which makes life worthwhile while facing or approaching that which makes life intolerable, right? So that, like, joy for Smith is really about kind of defiant pleasure, right? That, like, in spite of everything, no matter, like, in spite of potentially, you know, insurmountable, what feels insurmountable, I'm still able to feel pleasure, and that in itself is a victory. And so the idea of feeling, which I understand, right? Feeling guilty about feeling pleasure when we know that our community members are falling ill or are facing, you know, systemic racism or oppression, people not being able to pay rent, that feeling guilt about pleasure potentially brings our attention to the plight of other people, but that joy right now is a victory, and that we should you know, do everything we can to spread that joy, right? So, like, despite potentially insurmountable circumstances, right, people can go to Oracle Tree and have a moment where they're thinking about time and timelessness and their surroundings and have a really meditative moment, or they can go to Geode and think about community and place and belonging. And I think that's like a really beautiful thing that you are both offering to the city of Houston. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank
you. It's been a great experience, and I can't wait for other artists. I know that Antonius maybe has experienced, you know, that engagement with the community, and so happy for Israel that before everything went down, right, that he rather serves as our flagship, you know, of hope that this will end, you know. So, very good.
Let me check my notes to see if there's anything I wanted to talk about. Was there anything else that came up in discussion that either of you want to discuss? Or anything on your mind about your project that you wish you could talk about that I haven't asked you about?
I think, and this is something I like to remind myself, I have it on a sticky note, but it's just reminding myself of the etymology of the word to curate, which is something that Art League and you guys have done. And that word comes from the word or the meaning of to care. And I think that's so important. So again, sort of tying strings or threads through these different artworks as a way of also caring and being with, and creating those moments for joy, for being in the present, again, while still thinking about, the past and speculative, interesting futures. But that etymology is always really kind of dear to me, right? Literally keep it close by on a sticky note. So curating and caring.
Yeah.
Cool.
And in that way, both of you have curated a piece for the community that you're thinking about. So awesome. Erin, are there any questions from Facebook Live?
I actually have a question. Marsha, what materials did you use to create the geode?
It was stoneware, glass. The majority of the work was hand fabricated from slab clay. So it was very interesting, and I'm so glad to have been accepted, because the moment it was offered, I started working. So I was so excited about it, and I knew that it was going to be quite labor intensive. So there was a lot of cutting and using sunlight to help me fabricate the pieces. Wood and steel. Other than that, Flying Carpet was incredible with helping me assemble this piece into something that was safe and stable. I'd never worked with steel before, so it is shrouded in steel.
Yeah, there's something I really enjoy about both of your pieces. With Marsha, yours is so grounded and it feels like connected to the physicality of the earth, but Lina, yours is like
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
light and kind of going through and traveling, like you were mentioning motion. I like how it's those two dualities in both of your works that are really present. And I feel like it also kind of brings about to the history of Houston, maybe not so much in a physical way with people, but the physicality of like nature and the environment and how Houston is. So I think that's just something really beautiful about both of your works. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you so much. Thanks. There's also a lighting element in the piece that I'm looking forward to seeing, after the show is over, that it's lit at night from without, but it has lighting from within. We kind of played around with that and did some interesting light tests, and may actually add an audio element at some point. I don't know, but we'll soon be collecting stories. This is one of the few pieces that I've made for the community where the community wasn't engaged in the fabrication, and so there's still a lot of opportunities for contributions in that regard. So to talk about a move that they've had to make, no matter what that means to them, moving from, moved in some way it's not tangible. And so I'm looking forward to seeing or hearing what people have to say about that. And one of the things that, even though it's different to everyone else, or at least it feels different, I wanted to shroud the piece in something that everybody can relate to. And I wanted originally to have something like rust, because it's something that you have to curate, right? That it's something that you have to pay attention to, otherwise it feels like it's out of control because it doesn't sleep, as the song says, right? But as it turned out, and when I was almost at the end of the show, the fabrication part, and was working with Kelly and Patrick, I sat there and I thought about, I wanted this ochre or something that maybe absorbed the light. And I looked up, and right in front of me was a U-Haul truck. And I said, and it has the very same color that I was looking for. So rather than thinking of adjectives that maybe at some point we've all shared, and may not be able to articulate, everybody knows what it means to have to get a U-Haul, So it was kind of a beautiful little accident that was totally appropriate. So that was a lot of fun.
That's a great story, Marsha. Thank you.
I also want to thank some people that have also helped me make this project possible. I mean, none of it, I'm not an island by any means. So we keep talking about connections, and they're very present in the makings of these pieces. So everybody at Art League's been incredible. City of Houston, I mean, it's so nice to feel supported, and to, again, have an opportunity to make these connections. And Taylor Knaps has been a collaborator for the last couple of years in really helping me figure out technological kind of possibilities where we just have an interesting dialogue, and I'm like, I really want to do this thing. How can we make it work? And so now I'm playing, we were talking about powering pieces. Marsha, you made me think of this. And so this will be my first foray. Well, not really. We did this at Rice also, but in creating solar power. So the whole piece is also going to be running on solar power. So thinking about, like, how do you make a piece in the middle of nowhere that might still have, you know, lit elements or other things. So this was something I tried out in these solar powered containers on campus, but I hadn't built them all myself. So so that's fun and exciting, and testing them all, you know, different kinds of weather, and also just thinking about speculative futures, right, in our relationship to new kinds of energies. And Colin Hendy has been great also to work with in terms of building for even also previous projects of figuring out how I'm going to get a projector where I need it to be, or how I'm going to build this bench and make it, you know, something that we actually want to sit on. So thank you to everybody involved, really.
Awesome. Yes, everybody's been so very supportive, particularly now, you know, particularly now.
If our viewers want to find you on the internet, how can they do so?
Lina Dib.
Dorsey-Outlaw.com. Sorry.
It's for y'all. LinaDib.com and MarshaDorsey-Outlaw.com.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Just so everyone knows, like I mentioned at the beginning of the roundtable, all of these will be available on Art League's YouTube channel, which you can find via Facebook or the website. This one will be available in a few days. On view right now is Marsha's piece at Townwood Community Center. Please go check that out when you have a chance. Israel McLeod's piece is on view on South Victory Drive. Michael Stevenson's piece is on view at College Park Cemetery on West Dallas. And I'm missing someone.
A-Leaf Art House.
A-Leaf Art House. A-Leaf Art House at the A-Leaf Spark Park. Go check those out. They look great. Also, check out Exploration Green if you have the time to go down to Clear Lake. Beautiful spot. So maybe you can, without Lina's piece, start tuning into the sounds there. Yeah, and the Marty silent auction, Lina's piece, which you can see behind her shoulder, is one of the silent auction pieces. Okay, I think that's everything unless there's questions from Facebook. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Lina and Marsha, for being here. Thank you, Erin, for helping us with technical stuff. And thanks everyone who tuned in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye.